All right, so I wanted to talk about season 2 of The Shield Heroes so far. This is being recorded after episode 3 because they skipped like 3/4 of the book, the next book in the sequence, which was light novel number 6. And this full arc is 4 books. So I thought it was going to be like a 24 episode season, and this arc would cover like somewhere between 15 to 20 episodes. I didn't think they were going to try to blow through the 4-book arc in 12 episodes. So it's going to be a super fast speed, and I kind of wonder how much they're going to cut out to do it. Because the first episode, they literally jump in like 3/4 into the next book, like very loosely glossing over everything else with montages and stuff. So I'm just going to go through the book and talk about all the stuff that was skipped mainly. Pretty much every Shield Hero prologue is a recap, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip most of that. But pretty much they're on Calmera because of bad weather after the fight with Lark and Therese and Glass. So Shield Hero uses his time to teach this swindling business guy essentially a lesson by threatening to tell people about his business prices, and he ends up getting like a 90% discount on what he wants to buy. And I always really enjoy this part of the books because it always emphasizes how good of a businessman he is with all his trading and stuff. So the Queen tells the heroes to have a meeting, and in the book they actually have 2 meetings before the tortoise shows up instead of the one that they did in the show. And they have this meeting because the heroes are too weak. And essentially, they all insist on it being a forced loss because they're still treating it as a game. And they call Naofumi a cheater. Oh, also, I'm probably going to butcher the names, so sorry. They also figure out that Lark and Therese weapons work like the hero weapons, but they don't have those hero weapons in this world or any other weapons like it, the scythe and the jewelry. This scene shows how much denial is really happening with the other heroes about what needs to actually be done, which is training and work. So the Queen essentially confirms everything Naofumi says, but they're still skeptical. And he tries to reason them into understanding that he has no incentive to lie, but they won't have any of it. And a lot of this stuff that gets brushed over, I like, because it really shows Naofumi putting in an effort to get the other heroes on the same page as him. And it shows that they have their own side of it, which is essentially denial. And they make him kind of a dick, which I like, because he fits a little bit more with like the anti-hero thing than just the straight up hero, which they're sort of skewing toward in the show. And something really big here that gets skipped over in the show is the mention of the 7-star heroes, which are a slightly inferior version of the 4 heroes, but they can also be people from the world that they're in, not just people who get teleported there. They go quickly over this in the second episode, but I like that they go about it here when they're having this meeting. I think it makes more sense. And they kind of get a little bit more into the details and the types of weapons and stuff. And I'm curious to see when this comes up in the show with a little bit more detail, because as the books go on, right now the most recent book is 23. The show is in book 6. To give you an idea, the first season covered 5 books. As the books go on, these 7-star heroes become very relevant. So that's the kind of stuff I'm worried about, is like the long-term effect of skipping this much stuff in the books. So after the meeting, the Queen keeps Naofumi behind to talk to him privately, and she asks him to go on a task because if she sends the other 3 heroes to a foreign country, she's worried that it'll make Melromarc look like they sent fake heroes because of how weak they are, and that the 7-star heroes aren't supposed to be stronger than the current heroes, but they probably are. And they also haven't been in touch. Like, she doesn't know, like, nobody knows where they are essentially, or they're too far out of reach with Melromarc for the Queen to know where they are. And they make the Queen seem a lot more politically savvy in the books, which I like. And something that got skipped really early on in the series is the Queen tells Naofumi he can just live there and live a peaceful life, not have to play the role of a hero anymore if he puts a baby in Melty, because this would forge their alliance with Shieldfrieden. So like that kind of stuff is interesting, and it really shows how pragmatic she is and how politically motivated she is. So the show did something a little bit out of order with last season, which isn't a huge deal, but I wish they elaborated on it more in the show, because it really explains Naofumi's motivation for taking in Rishia, and it really shows how warped the other heroes are. They just have severe character flaws. In this book, he runs into Rishia doing bitch work for Itsuki's party and wearing that, I think it's called a Kigurumi outfit, and he thinks that she's being punished, but she tells him that she likes it because she's really anxious. So we get her backstory, where she came from a noble family in ruin, and Rishia was going to be offered to the dick nobleman who ruined her family, and she was taken by force, and then Itsuki, the bow hero, saved her. And she makes this annoying feh sound every time someone talks to her, like whining, which the show does a good job of. He helps her take the groceries back to the room with the Bow Heroes party, and Victoria talks through Philo's Calic and pretty much says she doesn't know anything about Glass, Lark, or Therese. So as we keep going, he's on the terrace and he sees Motoyasu with Rishia, and he can tell she's been crying for a while. She refuses to tell him what's wrong, so he just leaves it alone for the night, but it bothers him. The next morning, he goes to Itsuki's to see what happened with her, and he knocks on Moriyasu's door, and Moriyasu tells him what happened. And then we cut, and he kicks in Itsuki's door, and his party members are mad and chase Rishia away. He knows that Rishia got kicked out of the party for being framed for stealing something, and he knew that the only reason Itsuki went along with it was because he was jealous that she was important in the battle against Lark and Glass and Therese, and he wasn't. He got overshadowed by what he views as his weakest party member. And he got one of the Queen's shadows to talk to Itsuki to confirm that story that she was framed, and he chose to believe his party over the shadow. So this is like the sort of ego denial compensation thing that we see them doing with their morals, the other heroes. Like, it's very prevalent. So Itsuki acts like a bitch. It says that she was too weak, and that was the real reason he kicked her out, was for her own safety. And they get into a heated exchange and insult each other, and Itsuki uses this warped logic to defend himself. Naofumi makes him look like a giant pussy because it gets heated to the point where Itsuki is shooting at him with his arrows, and Naofumi doesn't even bother defending himself. He just lets them hit him because he knows that they can't hurt him. And it's a really great scene that I'm really bummed that we're not going to get to see unless we get flashbacks. It really emphasizes Naofumi kind of anger motivated and a bit of a dick, which I like. And it shows how stubborn the other heroes really are, because in the show, we just kind of get quick glances of it. So Naofumi leaves, and Philo dragged Rishia out of the water, who was trying to kill herself. And we get this abbreviated at the end of season 1. And he asked her to join his party. And this is where she explains the outfit, that she wears it because she's depressed. The next chapter, they montage over in the show, but he puts in a custom weapon orders with the old man and tries to figure out what Rishia is best at. And he says she's even, but has low stats across the board. They run into Keel, and he says that he wants to be as strong as Raphtalia, so Naofumi agrees to take him along. Naofumi tells Rishia and Keel to maximize their strength. They need to become his slaves, but it's their choice. He's not going to make them do it. And they both end up doing it. So we cut, and Naofumi's talking to the Queen, who introduces him to Melty's personal knight, Eclair Saeto, whose noble family governed Raphtalia's village in that area prior to it being destroyed. She's one of the best sword fighters in Melromarc. I think they say she won a fencing competition. And she has really good technique and skill, but she can't level up like the heroes do. But she's still going to train them because she's very technical and skilled. So she's going to train Rishia and Raphtalia. And the next chapter is really important, and I'm kind of surprised they skipped it the way they did, because the old lady that he saved in season 1 says she's going to teach him the Hengen Muso style, where she fights with life force, which is different than magic, and she's able to attack Naofumi and make him feel it with just a stick, despite his defense. And they decide to train with her, and Raphtalia and Eclair and Rishia are also going to learn from the old lady. She says that Rishia has the highest potential for it. And the reason I said it's obviously important is because if that's where her potential strength is, then they're kind of skipping like a pretty big setup for stuff later on, or they're skipping some serious, foreshadowing or whatever you want to call it. And also, you get a more in-depth explanation in the book that I don't think we're going to get in the show really. And we get another chapter that got skipped that I'm bummed, because Naofumi invites the other heroes to learn with the old lady and they refuse. Ren calls out their weakness and Eclair challenges him to a duel. Naofumi says that Ren can't use any hero powers and Eclair can't use magic, so it's purely a battle of swordsmanship. And Ren gets dominated and then uses a power so he doesn't actually lose the duel. And it's a really cringy scene, but I like it a lot because it shows how stuck in his pride he is, that he can't admit that he needs someone to help him get stronger. And this is sort of the crux of the problem with the heroes. So they all agree to go to the mountains to train with the old lady, and the other heroes all just pout the entire time because they can't do it immediately, and they have to meditate and do stuff they just don't like. So the old lady duels the heroes, and only Naofumi can defend against her attacks, but even he gets hit by her. But the other 3 heroes don't even block a single attack. She just beats their ass, which was a really good scene too. There's not much detail. It just goes over it quickly, but I like it. She shows them how to make a boulder crack with just her fingers in the stone and wants them to do it. And they all get mad and pout because they have a hard time conceptualizing it. Because she sticks her fingers into the boulder and it gets soft and then just splits. So the next day, Naofumi makes life force water to see if it'll help him feel the flow of it, to understand it, to speed up the training, because she says it'll take years to master most likely. And it has a mild effect on him, so he sort of understands it, but it works really well on Rishia. And this is all really big stuff that was left out, because you're getting a flash of her being much stronger through this life force water that he made. So the 4th day of training, the rest of the heroes show up and then run away after pouting. And I'm a little bit bummed that they skipped it, because we get a good scene here with the Queen, and you can really see how much of a hard ass she is. And she tells them they can't leave the kingdom until they agree to do 2 things with her. One is to investigate and eradicate the mysterious monsters coming in from other countries, and the other is to participate in the next wave in a week. They all agree and leave for the day. This is where Ost shows up in the story, and she obviously shows up at the end of episode 1 in the show. So the next chapter comes up in the show, and they show the spirit tortoise right away, so the audience knows what's going on. But in the book, you just don't know. They are fighting the familiars, but because they don't know who it is, it just says Blank's familiar, bat type. And it attacks a bunch of villagers, and they realize that it came from the east, and that the bats have killed a bunch of other monsters also, not just humans. The next chapter is a pretty short chapter. It's meeting up with the queen and the heroes again. So this is the second meeting that I was talking about. And they all say they have no idea what the monsters are from, and Naofumi's like, they're obviously lying. Naofumi returns to Raphtalia, and Keel got attacked by one of the monsters and isn't healing. And he realizes that it was trying to burrow into his back and take him over. And then they run into the Yeti form that you see in the show. They make it a little bit bigger of a deal in the book, and we find out that Rishi is a bookworm and recognizes it, but doesn't know from where. So this chapter ends with Naofumi wanting to go to report to the queen, but he also says, and the other heroes never came back to make their report. So then the next chapter, we find out that the heroes broke through the barricade and went to take on the spirit tortoise themselves for glory, essentially. And then the shield heroes trying to chase them down. And this is where we actually find out about the spirit tortoise for the first time in the book. Obviously in the show, they show it almost immediately. The queen informs them that they have a magical device in Falbury to confirm that the heroes are alive. So then Naofumi and his party go toward the tortoise to rescue the 3 idiot heroes. So they ride for a couple days to meet up with the other country's leaders to formulate a plan. And this is where they start shitting on the heroes. And this is the first time we get Naofumi speaking like a hero. And he even says to him, like in his own head, what am I doing? This is so unlike me. And this part is kind of funny too, because Raphtalia isn't in the tent with them like she is in the show. But Rishi and Eclair are both nearby, and they say they heard it, and they were like really moved by his speech and ready to go. And the battle with the spirit tortoise was a bit different than how they did it in the anime. Eclair is a part of Naofumi's party more than like leading her own cavalry unit. And they kind of do like a blitzkrieg style thing where the shield hero and his party rush in, like way out in front pretty much. And they fight through the bats and Yeti familiars themselves, and the shield hero takes a kick from the tortoise. And in this world, regular physics don't really apply. It's all about your stats. They kind of mentioned it in the show in the first season, where they mentioned in the first season, I think, when they're fighting the whale, that if they get someone who's strong with distance weapons on a harpoon, it'll be more effective. So the harpoon itself almost doesn't even matter as much as the person using it. And this is a similar idea where the spirit tortoise goes to kick the shield hero, and he can withstand it, despite it being like mountain-sized. So Raphtalia jumps up and nicks its neck, and its neck heals up almost right away, so we know that it has regenerative abilities immediately, like as soon as they start fighting it. So the old lady jumps up and kicks it a bunch, and it gets pissed off, and then Eclair follows up and attacks it, and the tortoise uses a gravity attack in response. Naofumi puts out a barrier, and once his party is inside the barrier, it nullifies the gravity attack. And the tortoise gets frustrated and launches an electrical beam out of its mouth at him. That's like really difficult for Naofumi to withstand. They fight it, and they all charge up their powers. And Naofumi takes the brunt of these attacks, like 2 or 3 of them. And Raphtalia and Philo team up with a special combo move that they've worked on together, and they cut its head off, and it's pretty cool, like it was in the show. But I'm surprised with what they did with the spirit tortoise, because the missile launching thing that they did in the show is in the middle of like the next book, so they kind of skipped a lot there too. And this book has about 10% left at this point, which I'm assuming will be in episode 4. But Ost never shows up in this fight, in the book I mean, and it's kind of weird because in the book they actually think they have won. You know, they cut its head off, they haven't seen Ost, they think it's over. But Naofumi notices that the weird blue hourglass is still in his vision. So they go up and inspect the village on the tortoise's back and find some stuff written in Japanese, but it's been partially destroyed. And I'm also a little bit worried about how much they'll skip if they jam 4 books into 12 episodes because of this kind of thing that I don't know if we'll get it in the show or not, or if they'll just quickly reference it and then move on. But they give up on the search for the heroes, and they decide that they just need to keep training. And then there's an epilogue for the bow hero, but I don't really care about that in the book, so I'm not going to mention it. So that's pretty much it. I didn't mind the show. I guess if they're on a time crunch, it kind of is what it is. I just hate how much character stuff gets left out because of the time crunch. And there's always a chance that deviations from the source material now will propagate through the show the longer the show goes on, to the point where the story itself will have to really diverge. I'm enjoying the season so far. I'm curious to see what they do with it. I mean, they already showed this in the show, but that Ost was still alive, so they realize they haven't defeated the tortoise. But I like that in the book, that they think they've defeated it, and they have peace for like a week before it comes back. I'm guessing that's going to happen next episode, honestly, with how fast they're going. But I guess we'll see. So that's it. I guess depending on what they do with the rest of the season, maybe I'll make another video talking about the book versus show comparison. I don't know. Okay, see ya.